My very first trip ever to the state of Texas was in 1990 for an IPO of an oil services company called Technology. But the important part about that story is my very first impression was it was Houston in August. I wasn't rushing back to Texas for a while, but I'm glad to be with all of you guys here today. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me here. I don't know why I'm here. I just know I'm supposed to be here. And I also know that every one of you is supposed to be here for some reason, because the Lord has no accidents. And so maybe something I say, something that happened to me, resonates with you today. Maybe Integris is the kind of thing you've been looking for. Maybe Luis Palau is something that you say, wow, I'd actually like to invest in bringing the gospel to the darkness of the Northeast. So I don't know what it is, but let me pray. Papa God, I thank you, Lord, that we know that you are in control. As crazy as the world can be, that you are there. You are in your throne, Lord, and you are sovereign. I thank you for every man in this room, for his heart to follow you in every aspect of his life. That these men would take time out of your day, Lord, to come together in fellowship in the name of Jesus. I pray, Lord, that I just yield to you my tongue and my lips and my brain, Lord, that everything I say today would be edifying. It would be what you would want to hear. And I pray that you would open up hearts to your message, whatever that may be for each man in this room. I also lift up in prayer the people of the Ukraine, Lord, and the people of Russia. And I pray for courage and wisdom in our leaders. We ask this in the mighty name of Jesus. So I'm going to share with you guys this morning, as this says, a journey that's been going on for me for over 50 years. And it's the journey of understanding the why of work. And I've broken it down to the 7 stages of my life. I've got a couple quotes on work. And I want to see, as we go through them, think about whether any of these sound like work for you. First one, work should in fact be thought of as a creative activity undertaken for the love of the work itself, and that man, made in God's image, should make things as God makes them for the sake of doing well a thing that is well worth doing. Dorothy Sayers. Jobs are what people do for a living. They work mainly for the purpose of making money enough to enjoy their moments of not working. And at a certain age, most men I know want out. Slowly, ever so slowly, the grind is eating into their souls. They are becoming men without purpose, waiting for it to be over. After all, even bank robbers can tithe. So before I do that, I just want to get a sense of the audience in the room. Is there anybody here who is in full-time Christian ministry? Just raise your hand. Okay. So that's how I would have answered that question several years ago. You know, a couple of marketplace ministry nonprofits did a survey of their members, and they found out that only 5 to 9% of people who self-identify as evangelical Christians actually understand the intersection of their faith and their work. And I would say to you, you are all in full-time Christian ministry. There are three gaps that we have to get over in the marketplace to actually get to that understanding. The first one, a lot of us are across that one. I call that one the Sunday-Monday gap. Right? That's understanding that my faith has something to do with my life outside of church on Sunday. You guys know that because you're here. But that's where a lot of Christians, most Christians, over 90% of Christians stop. they think, okay, well, if I'm at work, if I go to my employer has a Bible study, well, that's okay. There, my faith is at work, and if I lead somebody to the Lord at work, my faith is at work. But that's limiting. There's a second gap that you need to get over, and that's the one that 90% of Christians don't get over, and that's the sacred secular gap. That is understanding that your job is sacred. It is just as much a sacred calling as a pastor. They might want to lead us otherwise because it makes them feel good, but our jobs are sacred callings and ministries. 1 Peter 2:9 tells us we are all high priests, prophets, and kings. And if we don't understand that, if we don't get across that sacred secular gap and see our work as sacred, you will never live out God's purpose in your business and in your work. The third gap is the knowing-doing gap. Great to know that, but how do I actually do it? What does that mean? How do I actually live that out? So let me tell you my 7 stages in my journey. Stage 1 I call no intersection, shallow faith plus dreams. So I grew up, as Bruce said, in a small town in upstate New York. Grew up in a Roman Catholic tradition. Went to church every Sunday. It was a small Polish church. The priest did Mass in Polish 3 Sundays a week and English a month, and English 1 Sunday a month. And I didn't speak Polish, so I wasn't getting a lot of theology out of this. I served as an altar boy from 8 to 18. Church was community for me. Church was a place where people came together, and when something good happened in somebody's life, everybody would go downstairs, they would have cake and coffee, and they would sing and celebrate. And when a tragedy happened in a family, everybody would go downstairs and have cake and coffee and commiserate with them. But it was community. It wasn't really theology. I had dreams at that time. When I was 8 years old, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know why. I'm the first in my family to go to college. We didn't know any lawyers. But I knew at 8 years old, I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to go to Harvard College, and I wanted to go to Harvard Law School. I do not know why. At 15 years old, I decided that I wanted to work at Cravath, Swaine & Moore in New York City, based on a magazine article somebody gave me. But also at 8 years old, when I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, that was what I wanted in my life, I had my first prophecy given to me. I was being confirmed in the Catholic Church. 8 years old is young, but we were such a tiny little church that the bishop wouldn't bother coming until there were enough kids to be worth his while. So so you had kids from 8 to 13. I was at the low end. So I'm 8 years old. After the service, he's going down the line and he's saying, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. And he gets to me, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, congratulations, you're going to be a priest one day. Congratulations, congratulations. And I thought, I'm not going to be a priest. I'm going to be a lawyer. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It was a total disconnect between being a priest and being a lawyer. Stage 2, all work, living the dream. So it was really easy for me to, when I went away to college, to really become a Christmas and Easter worshiper. And that was my faith once I went away to college. So I pursued school and I pursued my career completely unburdened by any thoughts of what my faith had to do with it. With God's help, I know, I got into Harvard College. I got into Harvard Law School. I got a job at Cravath, Swaine & Moore that I identified at 15 years old. And I got married to a wonderful woman. We had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. What could be better? And then I became a partner at that firm. My dream, everything I'd worked for my entire life. And I remember sitting in my new partner's office the very first time at this big desk with my big leather chair, and I sat down and I thought, is this it? Is this it? My entire life has been focused on getting in this chair. It should feel more like there should be fireworks or something happening. You know, I shared the story at a church in London once, and there was a man who came up to me and he said, "Oh, I know how you felt." He said, "I was on the executive committee at Goldman Sachs. I took the third most amount of money out of the IPO of Goldman Sachs. It was more money than I could ever have imagined in my life. And when the dust settled, I sat in my office and I thought, is that it? This should feel a lot better." Stage 3, the faith ramp up, hit by a sledgehammer. So my life looked great, right? On paper, everything looked fantastic. I had this great job. I had a beautiful home in Connecticut. We'd spent 7 years working in London. I'd spent 7 years working in London. Our son was born there. We had 2 beautiful children. We went on the great vacations. If you looked at it, you know, most Americans would say, "Yeah, I'll take that life. Thank you. Yep, I'll trade." But behind the walls, our marriage was in a slow death spiral. And I was absolutely clueless about it. I had no idea how unhappy my wife was, how lonely she felt. When I came home from work after a long day, I would go to work before the kids woke up. I'd come home after they were in bed. And when I came home, I didn't want to listen to her day. I just wanted to pour a drink and watch something mindless on TV. And I was not present. And she was alone, and she was hurting. She was so alone that she made the decision in 2003 to emotionally check out of the marriage, and for 9 months, I didn't even know. Well, the sledgehammer came on October 5th, 2003. We were in church. I reached out to take her hand. She pulled it away. That night, we put the kids to bed, and I said, "You know, you pulled your hand away today. Was anything wrong?" She said, these were her words, "I don't know where to start. I'm not happy, and I can't go on like this." I knew inside that there was more to those words than just those words, and I immediately broke down. And thankfully, the 3 things came out of it. 1, I saw a film reel of my life, not my life as it had been, but my life as I'd imagined it, and I realized it wasn't going to happen with my kids growing up and she and I growing old together. The second thing I realized was I was facing something that I couldn't control with the tools that I had so efficiently controlled my world, which were hard work, intelligence, and money. They were my control tools, and I just knew they weren't going to work. And the third thing that happened in that moment was I did something I hadn't done in a long time, is I cried out to God to help me. Well, within 2 weeks, through a series of coincidences, I found myself at this group called the New Canaan Society, a group very similar to this group. Marketplace guys getting together to be real together and to just pursue friendship and pursue Jesus. I walked in not knowing a soul, broken, and these men came around me. They came around me, they walked with me, and they taught me about Jesus, and they taught me about his promises, and they taught me about who I was to be as a husband and as a father. That was in October of 2003. December 5th of 2003, I gave my life to the Lord and began a new chapter in my life. I hung on 5 promises. This was all new to me, right? The faith thing was all new. Well, it says in this book of Malachi, God hates divorce. Okay, God hates it. That's good. It says he will never leave me or forsake me. He loves me unconditionally. He will never give me more than I can handle, and nothing is impossible with God. We went through a really, really dark and difficult year, and every time people would say, "Give up, it's hopeless, forget it," she's gone. She's moved on with her life. God would show up, and I would get the sense of, no, keep believing in my promises. Don't give up on my promises. November of 2004, he miraculously turned her heart around in 24 hours. And we were back walking together, first time walking together in faith. The long version of that story, if you're interested, I don't have time today. I know one of your past speakers, Eric Metaxas, was one of your past speakers. Eric wrote a book called Miracles. Eric is a good friend. And we are the chapter called God in Marriage in the book Miracles. And that's the full story of what happened. And if anybody's interested and you don't really want to give Eric your money, I have the right to send you a PDF copy of that chapter. So I'll send it to Tom, and but just don't tell Eric, because he'll get upset. Stage 4, Christian at work, clueless. So now I have this newfound faith. What do I do at work? What does that mean? Like, what does it mean now? I'm not just a lawyer. Now I'm this Christian, and I'm a lawyer. Am I supposed to do something different? I think there are 6 misses that we as Christians can make in our work when we're trying to figure out how to apply our faith. And I call them agonize, individualize, monetize, cosmeticize, prosperitize, and intermise. Agonize, we go, that's an easy one, right? I don't know what to do. What do? I have no clue what to do. That is not a sustainable state. That's like sitting on a fence. You're going to fall one way or you're going to fall the other way. You're either going to fall like, this is too hard, I'm just going to keep doing it what I always did. Or you're going to fall over to one of the other ones, right? Individualize is pretty common. That's what I did at first, right? I'm just going to be a better person. Like, how do I take the sin gospel or the social gospel, apply it to work? I'm going to try to do less bad things and do more good things, but it's all about me. It's not about the organization. It's not about changing the culture I'm in. It's just about me being a better person. Right? God calls us to more than that. Monetize. Monetize comes from kind of the classic message from the church often, which is that business is a platform for doing kingdom work, and there are only 2 kinds of kingdom work you can legitimately do from business. You can evangelize people, or you can make money and give it to people who evangelize people. And most business guys say, evangelize at the workplace? That sounds scary, and it's probably illegal. I'll just give money. And the church says, good job, great job, keep giving more. And ironically, you don't change the culture. You're still running your business for profit. You might be even treating your people worse, because now the more money I extract, the more pats on the back I get for giving more away. Cosmeticize. Cosmeticize, that one often happens when people hear the message, integrate your faith into your work. Max Dupree, the former Herman Miller furniture chairman, once said, talking about integrating your faith into your work is like talking about integrating your marriage into your sex life. Think about it. It's backwards. If your faith can fit in your work, your faith is way too small. We need to talk about, how do I bring my work into my faith, which is my life? Because if you just think about bringing your faith into your work, you know what people do? They sprinkle Christian pixie dust over their business. All right, we'll start a Bible study. Maybe we'll give out some Bible tracts. We'll put a Bible passage on our packaging. Maybe we'll get really bold and we'll put God in our mission statement. But they still treat people the same. It's still all about profit at the heart. They still treat their customers the same, their vendors the same as any other business. But it looks good, and they go on stage at Faith and Work conferences as a model of what you should be doing. Prosperitize, that is when you say, oh, bringing my faith and my work together, people will say, yeah, do that, and God will bless your business. Cool. Now my faith is like another Six Sigma. It's a management technique. If I bring my faith in, God will bless my business. My profits will go up, my sales will go up. But guess what? If they don't, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time integrating your faith and your work. And intermise is kind of the saying, all right, you know what? Once we're successful, then I'll think about bringing my faith into my work. It's kind of the Bob Buford's success to significance applied to a business. Once we get successful, then we'll do something. And I fell into all these. Like, I agonized, I individualized. I gave more money. I started giving more money. Cosmeticize for me was putting a Bible on my bookshelf. Right? No one ever noticed it. Stage 5, work removed into the wilderness. So in 2009, I'm now a lawyer, I'm a Christian, practicing. 2009, the Lord makes clear to my wife and I that he has a different plan for my life, and that I meant to walk away from my legal practice for his plan, but he doesn't tell me the plan. And so in 2009, I walked away and said, okay, Lord, here I am, now what? And I foolishly gave him 6 months. I said, I'll give you 6 months to show me what's next before I try to figure it out myself. And at that 6-month deadline, I got a very clear message. No, it's my time, it's not your time. And so for about 12 years, it was a daily waking up and saying, all right, Lord, you've given me a new day. What do you want me to do with it today? And saying yes to things like this. But it also became a search for a new identity. I didn't realize just how important that identity of being a lawyer was to me. Right? What's the first question someone asks you at a cocktail party in America? What do you do? Right? We define ourselves by what we do, not by who we are. And all of a sudden, I didn't have a business card. Right? I no longer could say I'm a partner at Cravath, Swaine & Moore. Right? So I started being like, well, I used to be a partner at Cravath, Swaine & Moore, and then God did, well, you don't want to hear about God. Let me explain. It was hard. And I latched on to the New Canaan Society. It was kind of my next identity that I grabbed onto. But it was a difficult time in the wilderness with work gone and just trying to follow the Lord's path. Stage 6, 10-year wilderness journey bringing faith and work together. So I got involved in the leadership of the New Canaan Society, got very involved in the faith and work movement. Turned out 2 weeks after I left the firm, the founder of the New Canaan Society, who had become a very close friend, called me up and he said, you know, I've been doing this for 13 years, I'm burnt out. If I take a 6-month sabbatical, would you take over for me? I said, okay, I guess that's one of the next things. And then that organization went from being just in one guy's house to a national organization, and I was helped restructure that to be a national organization. So that became a big part of what I was doing. Got involved in nonprofits, and then I had there was a second prophecy. I didn't tell you about it. Second prophecy. In 2008, before God showed me to leave my practice, an old NCS guy came to me and he said, God's been downloading to me about you for 2 days, and I've written it all down. Can I come and share it? He came over, it was all handwritten. He read it to me, and the gist was, you're meant to start a Christian law firm where greed is not the creed, serving clients for whom greed is not the creed. I said, thank you very much. Not interested. Tucked it away, only told my wife. So now, some years roll by, 4 years later, he calls me up and he says, hey, did you ever do anything about that? I said, no, not really. He said, well, I have a few more thoughts. So he shared them with me. And I thought, I have some time now. I'm going to go and pray about this. So we went away. We have a home in Vermont. Went away for a few days. I prayed. And I sensed God say, yes, you're supposed to do that. And you're supposed to do it with people like. And he gave me 2 specific names of men I knew were solo practitioners and lawyers. Wrote it down, told only my wife, tucked it away, did nothing about it. We roll forward another 2 years. And one of the 2 guys whose names I wrote down called my wife and said that he and the other guy whose name I'd written down were thinking of starting a Christian law firm, and did she think I'd have any interest in joining them? And that's when I said, Uncle. So, long story, we went down the path of that. They each got pulled off in different directions. The result of a lot of refinement was the next stage. But in the process of it, at a retreat, I was given a personal mission statement for my life now, for my vocational life. My mission is to redeem work through the impartation of wisdom, spotlighting God's truth, and connecting its meaning to organizational cultures and practices. I finally understood the bishop's prophetic word. I can be a lawyer and a priest at the same time. Stage 7 is where I am now. It's Integris. I'm living my purpose, I believe. As Bruce said, Integris is a law firm, but with a very narrow focus. It is advising and guiding Christian business leaders in how to actually bring their faith and their work together, helping them walk down that path, and then being there as an advisor as they're making decisions to help them think it through from the perspective of who they are as a follower of Jesus, and then thinking it through from what they said they wanted their company to be and who they say they want to be. Because when we're in the midst of a transaction, we're in the midst of a dispute, we're in the midst of a decision, it can be very hard to step back and think about, wait a minute, what did I say I wanted this company to be all about? Who am I as a follower of Christ? And I assure you, the advice that you're going to be getting from your lawyers and your bankers and your accountants is going to be devoid of any consideration of your faith and your mission and what you want to be. So I want to, in the last few minutes, I want to just share with you some of the lessons that I've learned on the journey, in case they might be helpful to you. 3 categories: priorities, the bigger gospel, and the journey itself. So priorities, one of the things I learned from my marriage situation was my priorities were absolutely upside down. If you had asked me what they were at the time, I would have told you work, because if, by definition, if you're a good provider, you're a good husband and a good father. That's what I grew up understanding. And I was being a really good provider. Wasn't working. I would have said, God, I was at work, children next. My wife would want me to spend time with our kids, right? Spouse would be third, God somewhere down there. What I learned from that was was absolutely upside down. God has to be first, our spouse has to be second, our children third, and work comes below that. Identity, our primary identity has to be as a follower of Jesus. You only get one primary identity, and that is the one that you are going to protect. It will be the one you are going to fight for. And I will say to you now, don't let anybody tell you that you should be a Christian businessman. Do not be a Christian businessman. You know why? What's the noun in Christian businessman? Businessman. I'm a businessman doing it in a Christian way. No, you're not. You are a follower of Jesus Christ engaged in business. And if you just say that, words have power. You begin to think about what you're doing differently, and when there comes a conflict between those two, there will be no question which one needs to win. A bigger gospel. You know, I think the church does a real disservice to us. If you think about God's big story, there are 4 chapters to it. There's creation, there's the fall, there's redemption through Jesus, and then there's God's restoration project for his kingdom. The church has for a long time truncated that, and they only teach us the middle 2 chapters. You're a sinner, Jesus came to save you. Well, if we don't know where we came from, and we don't know where we're going, we can't really understand where we are. And I think it's a huge disservice to miss the bigger story of God's bigger story, because if you look at the 2 ends, the bookends of it, what you understand is only from Genesis. Do you understand that work is sacred and has intrinsic kingdom value? It is part of being human. God created it as a good thing. In fact, I would say if you are not working, you are not fully human. It is part of our humanity. It is part of us living out Imago Dei in the image of our creative and productive God. Integrity. Work is part of our faith, not vice versa. Balance. I would also say don't ever try for work-life balance. Our culture is obsessed with work-life balance. I think work-life balance is straight from the pit of hell. Do you know why? Because what it says is that work is an oppositional force to life. And God created work as an essential part of life. And we are being deceived into believing that work is something that we need to escape with retirement and we need to get away from, rather than embracing it as actually how we were made. Beauty. Work is part of God's restoration project. If you don't understand Revelation and what God's got in store for it, you don't really realize the meaning of what you're doing. Why? Your why is more about how you do what you do and who you are where you are, not what you do or where you are. People. Imago Dei. If we understand that from creation, we realize that what God loves people more than he loves money. And our businesses have to be about people and the flourishing of people. Grace for others. I learned this from the Texan Brene Brown. Right? Everybody is doing the best they can. Everybody's doing the best they can, given all the givens in their life. And that's really helped me have grace for other people. Grace for me, Tim Keller has often said there is no plan B. Right? God never wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I can't believe Paul did that. I never imagined that one. I got to rewrite the whole plan for his life now. Like, who do we think we are that we are? No, God is beyond time. He knows the screw-ups, and it's all factored into his plan for our life. And my story, I've learned that my story isn't the story. What story am I telling myself in any situation? The journey, commitment. Well, first in the journey, I've learned to make sure I'm running to something and not from something. If you're running, you're either running to or you're running from. If you're running to, you have a goal and you have a place you're going. If you're running from, any place will do. And often in life, we end up running from things. When God puts an Egypt in your life, don't long for your Egypt. Leave it in the past. Commitment. When God calls, burn the bridge and slaughter the ox. Perseverance. Don't give up on the brink of success. I learned this in my marriage. I heard a great story about Chuck Yeager, right? The guy who broke the sound barrier. Apparently, he was not the first guy to try it, but when you're getting closer and closer and closer to the speed of sound, the plane would begin to shake, and harder and harder and harder till it felt like it was going to break apart. The only difference between Chuck Yeager and the other test pilots was he didn't give up at the last moment. And I think in life, so many times, we give up on the brink of God's success in a hard thing in our life. And thank God in my marriage, that was one of the things that he kept telling me, don't give up, believe my promises. Trust, don't forget in the dark what God told you in the light. He is true to his word. Provision, a faucet is not a source of water. Think about it, right? A faucet is just a distribution mechanism for water coming from a vast reservoir somewhere. We often think of our jobs as the source of our provision. Our jobs are not the source of our provision. Our jobs are a distribution mechanism that God uses to fulfill his promise to provide. And the problem is if we get caught up thinking that our job is actually where the provision is coming from, we give way too much power to our employers. We make them God. And it's trusting that he will provide, and that if it looks like one job is not the right one and he calls us out of it, he will be faithful. Obedience. Follow the rabbit trail even if you can't see a rabbit. I can't even count the number of times in the last 12 years where something has come up and I've said yes. I've just said yes. It looked like God put it in my path, and it wasn't obvious why it made any sense or any sense and worth my time. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 corners later and connections, I realized, that was why he had me do the first thing. Somebody asked me this morning, coming to something like this. Tom asked. I could do it. I said yes. I don't know why. It might be because somebody needs to hear the message. It might be that I meet somebody here who says, you need to meet this person, and that person says, you need to meet this person. And a year from now, I realize that was why you sent me to Houston. Contentment. There are no worse things, just things that God has allowed that we don't yet understand. Presence. I learned this one at a seminar I took, or actually it was a kind of experiential weekend with a guy named Dan Tacchini. Our today is robbed by our expectation of a tomorrow. Our today is robbed by our expectation of a tomorrow. And he would say, think about what you would do in your life, particularly in the relationships in your life, if you found out you had 6 months to live. And when you figure it out, go do it. Because we don't know we have tomorrow. Purpose. Test all your actions by asking, what is your so that? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this so that, and so that. And if you ask enough so that's, what it should get to at the end is glorifying God, because that is the only purpose for which He made us. So I'll close with just a question. How many of you are in full-time Christian ministry? Thanks. So I have lots of time. I'm a slave to the plane schedule, so I'm here. If anybody, Tom had mentioned that sometimes you guys want to do a Q&A, so if anybody has questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Oh, Jimmy Kim, it's been a pleasure to meet you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. My question to you is, so there's several factions out in society right now, including the mainstream media, which are actively working against Christianity and Christian values. So my question to you is, do you face adversity when you're out there promoting your message in your business?
You know, not so much adversity as just deaf ears. Right? I mean, like, I don't know, that sounds hard. That's, I'm kind of okay doing it the way I've been doing it. That's sort of okay. And I think we are going to be facing that more and more, and we need to rest in the fact that we have the truth, and that we are the remnant, and we need to actually go about pursuing God even more faithfully, right? And really trusting in His word, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all else will follow. But the real question, Jimmy, is like the test was when he told me he has this radio show, and he says, yeah, I interview people like you. And I said, so the real test is, are you going to invite me to your radio show?
Yes.
All right. So I saw him.
Thank you again. My question to you is, I've got grandchildren. Would millennials and this younger generation understand your speech as we do? Little older guys here. The young people get it, or do we get it?
Yeah, I don't pretend to understand millennials, but I think that millennials are hungry for purpose. They're hungry for a why. They're hungry for the Mars Corporation, which is a secular business, did a survey of their employees, and they found from that their employees said, working for a company that is actually living out what it says it is and what it stands for is worth 30% in compensation. So I think millennials are actually, I think they're the hope, because I think they will get a message of a bigger purpose and a bigger why to what you're doing than just to make money, like those first quotes, just to make money so that you can spend it when you don't have to work and retire.
Thank you. Would you please expound a little bit more about the New Canaan Society?
Sure, yeah, the New Canaan Society was founded in 1995 by actually Eric Metaxas and a guy named Jim Lane, and really they created it. They said, there's no place we really don't see the church providing a place for marketplace guys to come together and be real. A safe place where they can come and just share their struggles, share what they're going through, and maybe when they get there, meet someone and say, wow, you too? Like, I'm struggling in my marriage, you too? I just lost my job, you too? And then to come around each other in fellowship. It is all about friendship with Jesus and friendship with each other. And they felt that to create a place where there was no religiosity, where men who wouldn't go into a church would feel comfortable showing up and beginning to walk in that journey. And it was also born of the understanding that men, as they become more senior in their careers, actually become more isolated. And it's even easier for the enemy to pick them off as they get more senior, and that because there are fewer and fewer people that they can actually confide in and trust with the struggles that they have in their life. It began with just 8 men meeting for coffee and bagels on Friday mornings in a home. And it's grown. When I first showed up in 2003, it was 200 men in the living room. And it's now 60 plus chapters across the country of men just getting together on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and just coming together in fellowship, sharing their stories, sharing testimonies, maybe bringing in speakers to share their stories, but it's really about a place where you can just come together as men and be real together and share life and pray with each other.
3 chapters in Houston?
Yeah, I think there's 3 chapters in Houston now. Yes, sir.
Relative to millennials, how do you bring millennials that were brought up in a faith and have decided to walk away from it and become basically agnostic? What is the best message, or what is it?
Gosh, you know, I have no idea. You know, I really don't. I really don't know what the best message is for that. But I think I know what it's not. And I think what it's not is it doesn't start with, you're a sinner. And I think by expanding it to that we were created in the image of God, and he said it was very good. And yeah, we screwed up. We all mess up. And we're all welcome. Because I think the deception is, right, that our faith the most open is portrayed as exclusionary. And right, people say, oh yeah, the Christian, you have to say this thing, and you have to believe certain things, or you're going to go to hell. Like, what kind of a faith is that? As opposed to, God, Jesus died for all of us. So I think we have to overcome that misperception that somehow our faith keeps people out rather than invites all people in. Yes, sir.
Do you have any regrets?
Nope. No, because it's God's story and it's God's plan, and you know, I don't know where I'd be if I changed one little thing. I wouldn't be standing here with all of you today. So no regrets.
You tell a compelling story. How does that play out in the law firm that you lead?
Well, I am the law firm I lead, and so it plays really well. It's just me, so well, some days I don't like myself, but usually I buy the story. It would not have played well in the law firm I was previously with. That's for sure. Oh, sorry.
So your alma mater, Harvard University, a lot of universities started as a Christian university. So your message, are you welcome back there with your message? Have you gone back and maybe introduced that to leadership? Or?
No. So I mean, I've shared it with Christian with Christian student groups. I was really excited a few months ago. I found out about a program at Harvard Law School. It's called something like the Harvard Law School Program on Biblical and Christian Legal Studies. And it is run by a woman who is an absolutely spirit-filled, like really spirit-filled, tenured professor, African-American woman. Extraordinary to me that she has tenure, and they are really starting to sort of develop that program at Harvard Law School. It's the greatest moment of hope I've had in Harvard since I left. But an interesting little tidbit. So you know, Harvard just said, the logo now just says Veritas, truth. Right? That's what you see on T-shirts and sweatshirts. The actual seal of the university that is embossed on every diploma still says Veritas e Christo e Ecclesia, truth through Christ and the church, is still the official seal of the university. They just have taken it out of circulation.
Paul, maybe you could field one more question.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming today. God always shows up bigger and better than we could ever imagine. Your message was so powerful. Thank you for taking the time to come here. Bruce, maybe one more question, then Bruce is going to.
Great. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Speak a little bit about your wife and how she came along with you after that initial year of recovery. And what is she doing with you now, and how is she supporting you in what you're doing?
Yeah. So it was it was truly miraculous because she had left. I mean, essentially had left and was out the door, and God sort of just showed her that that was not who He made her to be, in a vision of seeing Christ on the cross at Calvary and realizing that He had done it just for her, and that what the path she was taking was not the path. And the amazing thing was, you know, she sort of saw it as there were only two choices here, right? Continue in a crappy marriage or get out. And she just thought that the best thing for the kids was to get out. And I kept believing that there was a third path with God. And I said, you know, God doesn't want a lousy marriage. He wants a good marriage. And He doesn't want us to get out of a marriage. And she really, I mean, in her heart, believed she had tried everything and that there was no other path. And when she sort of had that revelation, a few days later, kind of the last hint of doubt was, but how could there possibly be a path to restoration? And it was our son's birthday. And she said, whatever you want to do that day, I'm with you. And one of the things that he wanted to do was see the movie Polar Express that had just come out. And if you remember the movie Polar Express, the message is believe. And when that message, believe, came through in the movie, she sat in the theater and she knew that God was speaking directly to her, telling her, you just have to believe that I can create that. Has it been a smooth and yellow brick road the whole time? No. There are bumps and there are turns and there are twists, but the difference is we're both committed to being on the road together forever. And so it's now been, do the math, 18 years since then. And our kids were very young, and they've grown up in a family that was not broken apart, thanks to the Lord. Thank you, guys.